The envelope was sitting on my porch when I got home from work, perfectly centered against the front door like someone had placed it there with intention. At first glance, it looked harmless, just another HOA notice printed on cheap white paper. But the second I saw the red stamp reading "Final Warning," something in my chest tightened. I had only been living in the neighborhood for 92 days, 92 quiet, uneventful days. I kept my lawn clean, paid every HOA fee early, never played loud music, never caused problems. In fact, most of my neighbors barely even knew my name. That was exactly how I liked it after everything my family had been through the previous year. But according to the letter trembling in my hands, I was already facing thousands. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing Linda's voice repeating the same cold sentence over and over again. The rules apply equally to everyone. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't true. Rules were supposed to protect neighborhoods, not target disabled people. I walked outside to clear my head and nearly dropped my coffee when I saw a bright orange sticker plastered across my father's medical van. Parking violations subject to towing. My father noticed it from the living room window and immediately blamed himself. That part hurt more than anything. Watching a grown man who had survived a stroke apologize for being a burden to his own family changed something inside me permanently. He kept saying maybe. The next morning, I installed security cameras around the house. Not because I wanted drama, but because something about the entire situation felt wrong now. The anonymous note, the constant violations, Linda watching my house from across the street like she was monitoring a prison yard instead of a neighborhood. My instincts kept telling me this was bigger than a few HOA complaints. And for the first time since moving there, I started noticing how strangely people behaved whenever I walked outside. Conversations stopped when I approached, curtains moved in windows, neighbors who used to wave suddenly acted like I didn't exist. It felt less like a community and more like a cult controlled by fear. Then later, one of the cameras captured something. After that meeting, things stopped feeling like petty HOA harassment and started feeling like psychological warfare. The very next morning, my internet went out for nearly 6 hours. Then my trash bins disappeared completely before garbage pickup day. Later that evening, someone reported my house for suspicious activity, causing a police officer to knock on my door while my father was home alone. Thankfully, the officer was respectful, but I could see the embarrassment written all over my father's face as he explained we hadn't done anything wrong. That was the moment I realized Linda wasn't just trying to pressure us anymore. She wanted to exhaust us emotionally until we gave up and left voluntarily. And honestly, part of me almost considered it. Every day that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the missing treasurer, Daniel Reeves. The more I replayed Walter's words in my head, the more disturbing everything became. Missing community funds, closed-door meetings, families suddenly moving away after conflicts with Linda. None of that sounded like normal HOA drama anymore. It sounded organized. Around midnight, curiosity finally got the better of me, and I started digging through old neighborhood forums and archived community posts online. Most of the older discussions had mysteriously been deleted, but a few fragments still remained. Complaints about unexplained fines, residents accusing the HOA of selective enforcement. One post even claimed the board had pressured homeowners into selling their houses below for nearly an hour. I just sat inside my parked car, staring at the financial documents spread across the passenger seat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear exactly, but from the realization that this entire neighborhood had been living under something far darker than a strict HOA president. Linda Mercer wasn't obsessed with rules. Rules were just the weapon she used to control people. The fines, the threats, the intimidation, it all suddenly made sense now. If residents became difficult, she buried them financially until they either stayed quiet or left the neighborhood completely. And if Daniel Reeves discovered the truth about the missing money years ago, that explained why he disappeared immediately afterward. I wanted to go straight to TH. I barely slept after the men showed up at my door. Every sound outside made me check the windows. Every passing car felt suspicious. By sunrise, I had already decided one thing: if Linda Mercer wanted to intimidate me into silence, she had badly underestimated the kind of person I was. Fear works best when people feel alone, and that was exactly how she controlled the neighborhood. So instead of hiding, I started talking to residents directly. Most people avoided eye contact at first, pretending they didn't know anything. But once I quietly mentioned the missing HOA funds, their reactions changed instantly. You could see it in their faces, that uncomfortable look people get when they've been suspicious of something for years but were too afraid to say it. Oh, the police arrived after I reported the break-in. But deep down, I already knew nothing meaningful would happen. The officers took notes, walked through the house, checked the damaged drawers, and asked the usual questions. But the moment I mentioned the HOA and Linda Mercer's name, something shifted in their expressions. Not surprise, recognition. One officer exchanged a quick glance with the other before carefully saying, "We've had complaints involving that neighborhood before." Complaints. That word stayed stuck in my head long after they left, because judging by the look on his face, whatever happened in this neighborhood went far beyond simple complaints. Before leaving, the older officer quietly advised me to be careful who you tell. I didn't tell my father about the phone call. He had already been through enough, and the last thing I wanted was for him to realize how dangerous this situation was becoming. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about what the anonymous caller said regarding the hidden documents inside the neighborhood clubhouse. If Daniel Reeves really left evidence behind before disappearing, that could finally expose everything Linda Mercer had spent years hiding. The problem was getting inside without attracting attention. The clubhouse was technically community property, but Linda controlled access to nearly every room, especially the HOA office and storage areas. Still, I knew one thing for certain: if those records existed, she was probably searching for them too. Later, I parked several streets away and walked toward the clubhouse wearing dark clothes and carrying nothing except a flashlight and my phone. The neighborhood felt unnaturally quiet. No dogs barking, no lights on, just silence. The kind of silence that makes you feel watched even when nobody's there. I reached the clubhouse side entrance and, after trying for a while, managed to force open a weak maintenance door near the back patio. The second I stepped inside, my pulse started hammering in my ears. The building smelled old and dusty at night, completely different from the polished version residents saw during HOA meetings. I moved carefully through the dark hallways until I reached the HOA records office. Locked, of course. But nearby, I noticed something strange behind a framed neighborhood map hanging slightly crooked on the wall. A small hidden keypad. My heart instantly started racing. Daniel must have known about it. I tried a few obvious number combinations with no luck until suddenly I remembered the year the neighborhood was founded. The keypad flashed green. A quiet click echoed inside the wall, and a narrow storage compartment slowly opened beside the office. Inside sat several old file boxes covered in dust. For 1 second, I honestly couldn't breathe. I grabbed the nearest folder and flipped it open under my flashlight. Fake invoices, secret bank transfers, signed approvals connected directly to Linda Mercer and multiple board members. Tens of thousands of dollars stolen over several years. Daniel Reeves had been telling the truth the entire time, but before I could process what I was seeing, a loud noise echoed somewhere behind me. Footsteps, slow, heavy, getting closer. Then a familiar female voice calmly spoke from the darkness at the end of the hallway. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find that room." Linda Mercer stepped into the light smiling, and she wasn't alone. For a moment, my entire body froze. Linda Mercer stood at the end of the hallway wearing the same calm expression she always had during HOA meetings, except now there was no fake professionalism left in her face, just control. Pure, cold control. Beside her stood the 2 men who had shown up at my house earlier. Up close, they looked less like security guards and more like hired intimidation. One of them quietly locked the hallway door behind me while Linda slowly walked forward, heels clicking against the clubhouse floor with terrifying confidence. "You really should have minded your own business," she said almost softly. I tightened my grip on the folder containing the financial records while my mind raced for some kind of escape plan. But Linda didn't look nervous at all. In fact, she looked relieved, like this confrontation had been inevitable from the very beginning. She admitted everything without hesitation: the fake contractor companies, the selective fines, the pressure campaigns against homeowners. According to her, the neighborhood was simply a machine, and she had learned years ago how to profit from people too afraid to fight back. The worst part wasn't hearing her confess. It was realizing how normal she believed all of it was, like ruining families and stealing money had become routine. Then she mentioned Daniel Reeves. My stomach instantly tightened. Linda claimed Daniel became unstable after discovering the financial fraud and threatened to expose the board publicly. But before he could act, he suddenly disappeared from the neighborhood voluntarily. At least that was the official story. The way she smiled while saying it made my skin crawl because deep down, I knew she was lying. I pulled out my phone and told her everything she'd said was being recorded. For the first time all night, her expression changed slightly, not fear exactly, but irritation. One of the men immediately moved toward me, but before he could grab the phone, a loud voice suddenly echoed through the clubhouse entrance. "Nobody move!" Multiple police officers stormed into the hallway with flashlights raised. For half a second, Linda looked genuinely shocked. Then I saw Walter standing near the entrance behind the officers, holding copies of the financial documents I had shared with him earlier. He had gone directly to authorities after realizing how dangerous things had become. Chaos erupted instantly. One of Linda's men tried running while officers tackled him to the floor. Linda herself remained strangely calm even as handcuffs closed around her wrists. But as police escorted her past me, she leaned close enough to whisper something that sent chills down my spine. "You think this ends with me?" Then she smiled again. "You still have no idea who's really involved." Linda Mercer's arrest should have been the end of the nightmare. For a while, it actually felt like justice had finally won. Police vehicles filled the neighborhood streets while residents stood outside whispering in shock. Watching the untouchable HOA president get placed into the back of a cruiser like an ordinary criminal. Some neighbors looked relieved, others looked terrified. But the strangest reaction came from the remaining HOA board members. None of them seemed surprised, nervous, yes, but not shocked. That detail kept bothering me long after the police left. Linda's final words echoed in my head over and over again. "You still have no idea who's really involved." At first, I thought it was just another manipulation tactic meant to scare me. But the next morning proved otherwise. I received a call from Detective Harris, the officer leading the investigation. His voice sounded tense immediately. He told me officers had searched Linda's house expecting to find financial evidence connected to the fake contractor companies. Instead, they discovered most of the records had already been removed before the arrest. Entire cabinets emptied, hard drives missing, documents shredded. Somebody knew police were coming before they arrived, and that meant one horrifying thing: Linda hadn't been operating alone. By that evening, panic had spread through the neighborhood faster than gossip ever had. Residents suddenly started talking openly for the first time in years. Stories poured out everywhere. Families threatened with foreclosure over tiny violations, secret settlement payments, board members intimidating homeowners behind closed doors. Even worse, several residents claimed local officials had ignored complaints against the HOA for years despite repeated reports of financial misconduct. The corruption ran deeper than anyone imagined. Then Walter called me, sounding more frightened than I had ever heard him before. He told me someone broke into his garage earlier and searched through boxes containing copied HOA documents. Nothing valuable was stolen except paperwork connected to the investigation. Before hanging up, Walter quietly admitted something else: Daniel Reeves may not have disappeared voluntarily at all. According to an old rumor circulating among longtime residents, Daniel was last seen arguing with Linda and another unidentified man near the clubhouse parking lot before he vanished. A man nobody in the neighborhood recognized. Suddenly, Linda's final warning made terrifying sense. She wasn't the top of the chain. She was just the face residents saw publicly, while someone else operated quietly behind the scenes. And if those people were now cleaning up evidence after her arrest, then exposing Linda might have only triggered something far more dangerous.